Let's talk.
Hey y'all, this is Mamaw off the porch. And today, in our continuing series of introducing candidates, I'm with Brian Bengs, who's running for Senate in the great state of South Dakota, where it's a lot colder than it is here, and it's pretty damn cold here. So, Brian, I've tried to tell all of my viewers why it is so important that we pay attention to Senate and congressional races all over the country because even though you're representing your state, once you're in Washington, everything you do will affect all of us. So I think it's really important. So please tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm a small town kid. I grew up in a small community, about 500 people in the farming area of northern Iowa, and went to high school. I was in the last graduating class from my high school, and went into the Navy immediately after high school, and used the GI Bill when I got done to go to college, and then went to law school, and ultimately went back into the Air Force, thinking I'd just do a few years and then get out and do something in private practice, but the Air Force just kept sending me cool places to do things I never imagined I'd have the opportunity to do. So ended up doing 2 decades in the Air Force, retiring as a lieutenant colonel in the from the JAG Corps, and then got a job teaching uh, criminal justice, homeland security, that sort of thing, at a small state university in northeast South Dakota. And just recently moved to western, kind of the opposite corner, southwest corner of South Dakota, to be more in the Black Hills where we're building a house now because we really love this location.
Okay. So you mentioned you started out in Iowa. We get a lot. I live in Ohio. Of course, I have an accent. And people are constantly confusing Ohio, I'll say it that way, Iowa and Idaho. I
Yep, 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 yep.
but I tell everybody it makes sense because we're considered flyover country. So tell me how you want to build bridges to where the two coasts understand that the big bulk of the country's in the center.
Yeah. Well, I think they're well aware that the land is in the center. They just think all the people are on the sides. And to a great extent, they're right, but it doesn't mean you should ignore the people in the middle. And I will say that the current head of the South Dakota Republican Party was a registered Democrat for 30 plus years. And the reason why he said that he switched to become a GOP person is because the Democratic Party isn't looking out for the working folks like they used to, like the regular people. And whether that's right or wrong, that's the perception that has
Mm-hmm.
been sold. And I can guarantee you, having talked to a number of people in South Dakota, that that perception is shared by plenty of people. So you can't just ignore this area. It's different, being in a rural community, and you know this. You live in a
Sure.
rural area; it is different than living in a suburb or a large city. So you just need to recognize the differences and approach the same issues from the perspective of like, okay, it's going to be a little bit different here, but everybody wants the same thing. They want to have a decent paying job, healthcare, all this stuff. Everybody wants the same thing. How we get there is sometimes different for different reasons, but we all want the same outcome.
I back late summer kind of did my own little research with my online community at the things that they felt were the most important in which they're looking for in elected officials. I always wanted to promote veterans because I think we need people who will swear an allegiance to the Constitution and the rule of law first. And I stumbled across this movement of you guys that are running as independents, great veterans that are running as independents. So tell us what was in the decision process for four of you to at least to be running as independents rather than Democrats or Republicans.
Okay, the full backstory for me personally is that I registered as an independent when I was 18 because I'm not really sure why. I just thought, well, it's better to think for yourself, I guess, fundamentally, which is still my position that it's better to think for yourself. And it's easier to think for yourself if you're not wedded to a particular party, because that kind of puts you in like, this is our group and their group is doing something against our group. And so that just forces you to think a certain way. But if you're not in the group that's being attacked, then, by either side, then you can go, okay, is that objectively, is that a good thing or a bad thing that they're doing and that they're trying to accomplish? So being an independent, I think, has always been a way of life for me, and it's predominantly in the military, as you know as well. It's overwhelmingly independent as well. So it's
Right.
not, it's less. You may align more with one or the other, but everybody thinks of themselves for the most part as kind of independent. So full disclosure, in 2021, January 6th, I was at home working on a book project. So I was sitting in front of my computer watching the situation at the Capitol, like, oh, what's this rally going to be? And then you see it turn into what it turned into, where you had Americans beating law enforcement officers with poles and chanting for the murder of the vice president. And having sworn an oath to the Constitution and the rule of law, as you noted, multiple times throughout my life, it didn't sit right with me. I could not imagine that happening, 10, 20 years ago. It just wasn't conceivable that this would be an issue. So I was motivated to act then when I saw that the current Senate Majority Leader, John Thune, was essentially set up to go unchallenged effectively in South Dakota because the Democratic Party didn't have a candidate. So I contacted the Democratic Party, the state Democratic Party, and said I was interested in challenging John Thune and asked whether they would consider letting me run as an independent with their support. And they didn't say yes, but they weren't entirely no either. So further research indicated that the state has a law that says if you're the nominee of a party, you have to be in that party. So I think it's probably an unconstitutional law, but I didn't have the time or the money to fight it at that point. So just registered as a Democrat and went out and ran the campaign. We lost horribly, which is why you're talking to me now. But the big lesson, which wasn't a surprise, but the amount of times I received it was a surprise, was that I would go up to people, anybody wearing Trump hat, whatever, go up to people, introduce myself as a candidate for Senate, and literally tell them I'm going to guarantee with 100% certainty that you and I will agree on at least two, but probably three things. And then I'd run down my list, and they're nodding along, and typically it was all three, majority of the time. And I'd get to the end, and I'd say, okay, so can I count on your vote in November? And what do you think the first words out of their mouth were?
What party are you in?
What are you? So what are you? And then when you say, well, I was a lifelong independent, but I'm running as a Democrat, more often than not, I heard, well, I'll never vote for a Democrat. Having literally just agreed with me on some big issues, like that was the end of the conversation. Well, I'm not going to talk to you. So I couldn't get it back on track at that point. And I heard that so much. And you hear all the time that people are like, I vote for the person, not the party. And I don't, in my experience, that's not true.
Yes.
So I was not, at the beginning of this year, I was not planning on running at all. It was it was not a pleasant experience. It had, some high points, but collectively that campaign was just exhausting and draining. And so I did not decide to run this time until I was working as a park ranger at Wind Cave National Park, not far from where we live, and seeing the Doge cuts with Elon saying, yeah, we're going to fire everybody. We're cutting this and cutting that. And the only reason that I didn't get chopped and the other probationary employees didn't get chopped were because we're all veterans and it looks bad to fire veterans. So I was thinking at that time, like, geez, this is horrible. I know where this is going. And we already, know kind of what turned out with that fiasco. And that, okay, maybe I'm in a position to step up and try to do something about this. So I was, as I said, I was not going to run again as a Democrat, having learned my lesson. And I actually ended up, I was following Dan Osborne's race in Nebraska from 24. He ran as an independent. And, but for some super PACs and the Republican Senatorial Committee dumping money in at the last second to try to get their Republican incumbent over the finish line, he probably could have won. He was very close. So I called him up and asked for his, compare notes of like, what was your experience versus my experience? And he was very positive because I said, would you do it again? And my answer is, if I was asked that question, was like, no, I will not do it again. And he was like, yeah, I felt like I was uniting families because, people would have Trump signs and my sign or Harris signs and my sign. And that it was easier to talk to people when you don't have to say, well, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican,
Right.
because you can bypass the whole I don't like you. You're not part of my group. And just talk about the ideas, which is what I wanted to talk about anyway. So based on his positive, uh, discussion of, yes, you can talk about ideas and it's more receptive and people are more open to talking to you. That's why I decided to run as an independent this time, because again, it returns me to what I was. It gives me the freedom that I'm not handcuffed to whatever the party says we're doing. I have to defend, good or bad. So we've talked to, Todd Achilles in Idaho, who's running as an independent, also a veteran. Dan Osborne, he's a veteran from the Navy. And there's an individual, Ty Pinkins in Mississippi, who's a veteran, Army veteran. So talking to all of them, we all come from the same, independent. So we don't have like this common, like we're not in agreement on everything, but we are in agreement on the big things like the system's broken. We need to fix it to make it more responsive to regular people as opposed to the big money interests that are controlling it now. So in terms of the structure and why it's not working for people, we're all in agreement that that needs to be fixed. And so we're kind of united around this core idea. And our thinking is if we can get enough handful of independents into the Senate, then ideally we would be able to deny the majority to either party
Yes.
and have the leverage, to be a fulcrum to say, well, if you want this, then we need to have this reform. Hey, we thought about like an mandatory ethics standard for the Supreme Court. So yeah, if you give us that, then you can have this.
Yes.
So that's the approach.
Yeah, I really like the idea of breaking that log jam that's going on in the Senate because any way you crunch the numbers, it's still going to be tight if we don't get some independence in there. But as I was getting back to this summer, I just kind of threw it out there online. I was amazed that I had over 1,000 people respond, which is better than most pollsters ever get. And amazingly, what I thought was going to come up as number one didn't. It was voting rights and fixing what's wrong with our government. And I noted on your platform, you were hitting a lot of those things. So I'd like to discuss those, like term limits.
Yep.
What?
I'm a fan. I was a fan in 22. I'm a fan now. Are there shortcomings with them? Sure, but I think the benefits outweigh the shortcomings. So I'm a proponent of 12 years. 6 terms in the House, 2 terms in the Senate, and then you're out the door. Competition's good. So in theory, if this works properly, then when the people like, oh, I'm the super representative, 12 years, that's not enough. I need to be something else. Then you'd be running for the Senate. So
Mm-hmm.
go compete. Competition's a good thing. We all love competition. This is America. And that's the problem with our economy is that we don't have enough competition. It's the problem with our politics. We don't have enough competition.
Well, one of the things I think that's always bothered me here of the last, I'll say 20 years, I'm old, is this constant, oh, they're going to primary me. Well, we're supposed to have primaries. We're
Yeah.
supposed to have choices. And now they eliminate that. The parties typically put their big old thumb on the scale. So you'll have somebody that maybe can get through a primary and they couldn't get elected in a general election if they had a pork chop around their neck. I mean, it's like, what is wrong with you people? And then the other argument has always been, well, the term limits the voting booth. Well, it's not with this kind of money. Not
Yeah.
when you've got, like you said, these big PACs, these big donors. I mean, I can only give so much, but a PAC can give an unlimited amount of money. So it's not a fair on the scales, which brings us to age limits. We've become a geriatric ward in all branches of our government. I'm of that age, so I can say that. So, what do you think about age limits on the judiciary?
No, absolutely. Yeah. I'm a proponent of term limits for the Supreme Court. Term limits would require a constitutional amendment, but there's a workaround, and I've written up for this and advocated for it. Senior status. So after 18 years, my approach would be 18 years on the court. If it's 9 members of the court, then we replace a member every 2 years. We get that schedule going. So going in that every president will have the opportunity to appoint 2 individuals. So when you vote
Mm-hmm.
for that president, you know that he's going or she is going to appoint 2 individuals to the court and then the next person and the next. So it's just on a standard rotation as opposed to, oh, this person died or this person suddenly decided to retire.
Right.
So uh,
I
that
like
would, in
that
theory,
idea.
take care of the age limits issue. But again, with the judicial issue, they have lifetime tenure. So it doesn't say lifetime until age 65 or 70. It just says lifetime tenure. You'd have to have a workaround, and you could do it with the same senior status idea, where you say, okay, once the judge hits, let's say, 70 years old, then they get senior status and they get assigned to different duties. They still have to
Hmm.
be a judge. You can't take that away,
Right.
but you can give them different duties that are not, being a district court or a circuit court judge, for example.
Well, I know in Ohio that our state court judges all have, they age out at 74. So, like you said, they could go around, fill in for other judges, but they have to retire or they can't run again at that 74 limit.
Mhm.
So, we've got to do something. We cannot continue like this. Um, the Electoral College. Everybody's screaming about the Electoral College. I kind of understand on the one hand of making sure everybody is equal, but now we're down to where we only campaign in 5 or 6 states. What would you propose as a good fix for the Electoral College problem?
Well, we still have the same issue that it's in the Constitution. So, short of a constitutional amendment, which is a heavy lift on any
Right,
topic,
on
let alone
anything.
that one, uh, the best workaround would be to adjust it to say that, okay, if we've got congressional districts, to the extent that we can get gerrymandering under control, first of all,
Right,
but if you've got congressional districts, you say, well, every district that voted for the president, you know, that president gets their electoral vote. And then if the state overall votes for whoever, they get the two electoral votes for each senator. So if you break it down, so like if California, for example, has a ton of representative, I'm not sure, is it like 40 something or
mm-hmm,
uh, representatives and senators. So if California has 40 whatever electoral college votes, if they're not gerrymandered the districts, then you could have, five go to the Republican and, whatever the rest go to the Democrat, or however it breaks out.
right.
So
So
if you
make it
make it so
proportional.
every state that has a significant population has that potential to have a mix, and you don't just get, oh, here's everything, then that is doable, I think, within the constitutional system we have now. And it's more fair because you're counting more people and you're making the whole map, as you know, more competitive because you have to actually go to North Carolina or all these other places that
Right.
have a handful of electoral college votes, and I need to scramble to put together enough to win that comes from a lot more places. So is that more difficult to be a candidate? Yes. Would it be more expensive? Yes. Would it be better for our system? Yes.
Yes. Well, I can remember a time when they did go to every state and campaign, and we've done away with that. And in my thinking, my humble opinion, is if it were a proportional, so like if one state was a 48-51 and you adjusted your electors accordingly, then you would still be following what the voters proposed. So under the
That's
Constitution,
fine too. I think that would it's the same outcome. So that's another,
right.
if we
Well,
can
I'm
work
just
that within the
wondering though,
constitutional system.
under the Constitution, because on the one hand, everybody screams states' rights until it's not convenient. So
Exactly.
if we had a federal redistricting system
Yeah.
versus allowing it up to the states, is that something that we could fit into the
That would obviously
constitutional
be a
system?
fight. I I think so. There'd be a fight about it, and given the current Supreme Court,
I have
we,
these
you know,
nerdy ideas. Just like, well, can't we kind of federalize voting rights, for example?
yeah,
Um, Now the biggie. What are we going to do about Citizens United? Because the last time I checked, Pepsi Cola Company does not have lungs, a heart, and blood pressure and all the things that it causes issues with me. So how can they give an unlimited amount of money?
yeah. That sums up the problem that in 2010, Citizens United, the court suddenly realized after 200 years of being a country that what, money and speech are the same thing. So we've got to protect the money because it is speech, and they basically just lit the dumpster on fire and handcuffed the country to it. So now we're trapped and we can't get away from it again, short of a constitutional amendment, which is effectively
Mm-hmm.
impossible. although I am confident, having talked to everybody I talked to in 22 on the campaign trail, that everybody recognizes and does not like the influence of money in politics. So if you ask the people, they're going to be like,
Right.
yeah, we need to get this under control.
Yeah, that
And
was
so
actually number one on our
you have the
list.
popular will, I think, overwhelmingly amongst regular folks to make a change. Like, let's amend the Constitution. You've got the logjam, which is why the system is the way it is, with the members of Congress are like, no, 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 money's a good thing. We want that. And then, the electoral or the elected officials in the states that would have to vote on this of no, 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 money. Yeah, that's good. We need that because it gives an advantage to the people who are connected and is supportive of the big money, supportive of Pepsi, supportive of Exxon, that sort of thing. I am running because I'm opposed to those sorts of things. I'm not taking corporate PAC money, and I have to rely on, which I think is better, a lot more work, but I think it's better to rely on regular people like, here's $5, here's $10.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of people to equal the amount of money that you get from one giant donor. But that's what my opponent is doing. Is the easy way. I call it whaling versus shrimping. You can go after the whales. You only need a few whales, and you can have your campaign chest full. If you're shrimping, you need tens of thousands of shrimp to toss in a few bucks here and there. But that's what's fundamentally it's going to take to overcome the money is you get enough people connected that think that's a problem and want to act against it, so we can actually make something happen, get people in office to make something happen.
Well, the thing is, 10,000 shrimp each have a vote. Three whales only have three votes.
True, but money buys information. So, and this was the issue that I had in 22. I'm told and assured that we had some campaign ads on TV. I literally never saw one on TV because we
Well,
couldn't put them on till the end, and we just couldn't afford to do it.
and this is the one thing I absolutely give MAGA World credit for back in 2014. And then it really hit stride in COVID while the Democrats were wringing their hands and trying to do things the traditional way. And we have pockets where they're still, they understood these online communities and they
Mm.
understood we can't break through on network TV. We'll do it this way. And that's why I started the porch is I'm going to get the information out. I may not reach a million people, but I'm reaching 100,000.
Yeah,
And I think that's the real secret. Do you think one of the things that could be amended to Citizens United and dark money, the PAC money, is simply that they have to disclose who's donating and how much to
that
actually,
could be that is within control, I think. So that could be changed if there was the will to change it. And of course, the beneficiaries do not want to change that because
well, sure,
they
on
benefit.
both sides.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I
But
think it would
yes,
help people a lot. Uh,
transparency is the universe. Sunlight is the universal disinfectant.
it is. Well, and like the movement now to go to school vouchers, we've gone through it, lost, and I know that a lot of other states are, and people don't realize it started on the East Coast. It's being backed by the Koch brothers and the DeVos family, and it's just like a giant wave going west. And a lot of people don't understand or realize where the money's coming from or that it's a multi state push. So
Yeah.
I think if we can start exposing where that money's coming from, people can understand the issues better. So after we got done with correcting the government, the number two thing was bodily autonomy. What's your stance on just basic bodily autonomy, male, female, or whatever your preference is?
Uh, my stance on liberty writ large is that you do whatever the hell you want to do. If it makes you happy and you're not hurting anybody else, you do you. Now, in terms of the pregnancy issue, I think Roe had it right in '73 as a common sense solution that there's a timeline, and at the beginning of the timeline, the first trimester, that's all you. And at the second trimester, the government, if it chooses to do so, can restrict it a little bit within the parameters that they specified. And then after the point of viability, the third trimester, then okay, the government can prohibit it as long as you have the carve outs for the health and well being of the mother. So I think that is the optimal solution. It's the correct solution, and I don't know. That's my position.
I think a lot of people, because they'll always then say, well, accept. Well, I think if people understood exceptions, I don't think anybody is talking about what was it, the birth abortions
Post
or
birth
the
abortions.
I mean, good Lord, people.
How anybody can say that with a straight face? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, the
Did you
baby
hear
was
what
born
just
an hour
came out of
ago.
your mouth?
Yeah, baby was
Because
born an hour ago, and we decided now it's too late. I don't want it now.
yeah, that's called murder.
Yeah, yeah,
But just with what these women have had to go through and carve out, and it gets back to, okay, I couldn't force you to get a COVID vaccine,
yeah,
but you want so somehow that has to be codified into the Constitution. It just has to be, because
yeah,
even in Ohio, we were like so many states. We got it on our ballot. We got it in our state constitution. They're still trying to screw around with it. So I think that's just the one thing that has to be codified into our constitution. Um, Now I'm of an age. Please don't be offended. I see our gray beard there a little bit, so you're going to be soon that age where Social Security is very important. It's part of my retirement. If something happens to my husband, I will lose part of his retirement. And I did my own studying, and it's not that the Social Security fund is going broke, as the Republicans are trying to scream. It's that we have allowed Congress to dip their hands in the till and borrow from it, and it's not being returned at the rate and at the rate of investment that it should have been. And so we need to somehow preserve Social Security and stop allowing us to borrow from the Social Security fund. Have you given any thoughts to preserving Social Security?
yeah. Obviously, we can fence it off so you can't use it like, oh, we just need to use this for a little bit. That shouldn't be happening. It's there for a specific purpose, and people contributed it explicitly for that purpose with the expectation that they would get it back, 20, 30, 40 years later. So that needs to be prevented. Now, going forward, Congress is not proactive fundamentally. It's reactive. Only when a problem jumps up and smacks them in the face do they even
Right.
start talking about it. But somebody really ought to be proactive in this, given the nature of Social Security that you start now and everything lasts. Uh, Going forward, the burgeoning robotics and AI movement, the goal of those things is to replace people to the maximum extent they can. So when you start replacing people with like a self-driving truck, so if we don't have to have truck drivers, commercial truck
Mm-hmm.
drivers driving, they would, the businesses, corporations would happily adopt that if it was available today, because then you get unlimited mileage. They don't have to rest, any of this. So we're going to have to deal with, uh, at some point in the next 10, 20 years, a population that has lost jobs. And so you have less people tossing money into the kitty. And the easiest way to deal with this, that's a separate problem, but easiest way to
Right.
deal with the solvency of Social Security is to just up the cap from whatever's 170,000 right now,
Yeah. Just
at least
eliminate the
double it.
caps,
Yeah,
or just eliminate it altogether, because
yeah.
in just the cost of that, which gets us into Medicare and Medicaid. Now, hear me out. The Department of Education has now said that nursing, occupational therapy, physical therapy, social work, those kind of fields will no longer be covered as professions or professional fields as far as funding for student loans and stuff. And I have a friend that relies very heavily on that for a child, an adult child. And it got us thinking, is this just yet another step so that Medicare and Medicaid will have to lower their rates because you're no longer, as a nurse, considered professional?
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, that
I
could be an
mean,
issue. Yeah,
so, my God, how can you say that a nurse? and we live in rural areas. We don't have a lot of doctors. We see nurse practitioners, and they're
Yeah,
phenomenal. They're ph What would happen to us out in rural areas if we didn't have nurse practitioners? If we didn't have therapists out there?
yeah,
And then when you look at what they're trying to cut back on Medicaid and Medicare, kind of makes sense. Well, they're no longer professionals, so we can't let you bill at a certain rate.
yeah. So this is again like the disparity between an urban, suburban area and a rural area, as you noted, that we just don't have doctors. There's just not as many to go around, and they're few and far between. So, my local VA, I know, doesn't have a doctor anymore. And at my
Yeah.
prior VA clinic, I saw a nurse practitioner. She was awesome. So the nurses are quite capable, but if you're going to declassify them so you're able to underpay them, that's going to disproportionately
Exactly.
impact the rural areas that are relying on
And the
these folks, as
VA,
you know.
you're right.
And the VA, yeah,
And that's all
exactly.
we have at the VAs, predominantly nurse practitioners. But if they're not professionals and they can't get the loans to get this higher level of education, I do not understand what the thinking is other than billing,
Yeah.
other than this is a really sinister
Saving
way to,
saving money, another way we can cut money because you lazy
so we
people
can
are
give
treat
it
this
to
people.
Venezuela and
Yeah.
Argentina and
So
Brazil
we can
and
give it
yeah.
to those who we really like, not you lazy people.
So it gets us to Medicaid and affordable health care. We've kind of been talking about that. So, how far do you have to travel if you have to go to, let's say you have a attack of appendicitis
Yeah,
in South Dakota?
where I am right now, I specifically picked because the VA hospital is like a mile from where I live. So I'm good. But if you go other places outside where I live, we have the regional hospital. So if you're in another area of the county, you're driving half hour, an hour, and there's going to be other places where you could be driving 2 hours, maybe three,
Hmm.
to get to a decent sized hospital that has the things that you'd need. So it's a distance, and I'm going to guarantee that people have died and will continue to die because of the time it takes to get to a hospital. If you're having a heart attack, you're having a stroke, appendicitis, any of these things can turn fatal if you don't do anything about them with enough time.
Where we live, and now Ohio's got large cities in it, and then we've got very rural areas. We're an interesting cut up state. We have three area hospital systems that would absolutely go under. We have a lot of elderly care, memory care that would go under without Medicaid. And I think what really angers me, at least from a rural standpoint, is the attitude, well, you're taking advantage. And so if you're on the Affordable Care Act or you're using Medicaid, you don't do anything. And unequivocally, everyone that I know that uses it is a working poor person. They work
Mm,
hard. They're working at jobs like we have a large company here that does the frozen food industry. We've got a potato chip factory. And they still have to supplement because the companies don't provide the medical. And so I think what people don't understand is in rural America, you are literally killing citizens by
yeah,
doing away with Affordable Care Act.
yeah,
And I don't know what they're going to replace it with.
yeah. The what was it? I think it was a $50 billion slush fund, rural healthcare slush fund that they had created, knowing that it was going to have this impact. But then it wasn't going to, they didn't have a formula to divide it. As I understand it, this is the end of the season, maybe for states to apply for
Hmm.
money from that slush fund is like, oh, we could use that to help fund this and that. So clearly there's a recognition that this is a problem. There's just an unwillingness on the part of certain politicians that are like, we need to cut everything because the billionaires, they're paying too much. Uh, that this is an issue that people's lives depend on it. And the rural system, the cuts are going to close more clinics and facilities in the rural areas because they're disproportionately reliant on the Medicaid folks that come in and the reimbursement from Medicaid. And the people that come in, if we're cutting the Affordable Care Act and subsidies, South Dakota is projected to have a 235% increase in costs for next
Wow.
year. So basically, the prices are going to triple, which means that people can either, I'm not going to, buy a car, or I'm not going to pay as much rent. I have to downsize, or I'm just not going to get it, which is the most likely scenario. And then you have it kicked back to taxpayers anyway, because the hospital's not going to turn them away if they walk into the door and say, I'm having a heart attack. What's your insurance? I don't have any. They're still going to be treated, and then the taxpayers are on the hook
Still
anyway.
going to pick it
So
up.
we are shooting ourselves in the foot with this.
And in our area, right now we've had several major employers have either shut down or have big layoffs. I won't get into that so much, but it's like, where are people supposed to go? And I guess people need to start thinking where we have exempted the wealthy from taxes. They still drive on our roads. They
Yes.
still get to use our utilities, which are all backed up. They're still using our school systems. They're still
But
using, and
I
all
would
these
disagree with
things.
that. I would say that the wealthy, if I have $20 million, do I care what the local high school, public high school is doing? Not really, because if there's a private school that's within, the region,
Yeah, we
I'm
don't
sending
have
my kid
one.
there anyway. Yeah. Yeah. There's not
Right.
one
But,
here, but if I was in a larger city, I guarantee you, your big money children are
oh,
not
yeah.
going to a public school.
But
So they
around
don't
here,
care. Yeah.
they don't. But, they're using our things that have been subsidized by our public taxpayer money. They enjoy having a military to protect them. They
Yeah.
enjoy all the things, so why aren't they paying their fair share? And I think the first thing we've got to do is repeal that big bullshit bill.
Yeah, and the one before that, and the one before that. So
Yeah.
there was four tax cuts since 2000. So the last time that the federal government had a balanced budget was 1998 to 2001. And then there was actually talk during that period of, hey, Congress, FYI, we could have the budget or the national debt paid off within the next like 7, 8 years if you wanted to just allocate the surplus to that. And there were some circumstances that took place, the attack on 9/11. So we went to war. It was thrust upon us. But then there was also a choice of like, oh, we got extra money. You know who should have that back? The
The
rich people
rich.
and the corporations. So four tax cuts account for roughly 50% of the national debt today, because we've
Wow.
kept cutting, 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 cutting. That benefits disproportionately the people with the most money.
Um, so that gets us into ICE, immigration, and those damn Canadians.
Yes, they're all over here.
They're all
I've
over the
actually have
place.
I have a crew working, starting putting on my drywall today, and they are not, they were not born in the United States, I'm going to say, but they work hard, they bust their ass, and they show up. So I've got no problem whatsoever with them. They came here for the same reason my ancestor came here, to get a better life for themselves and their family, and they're doing it the way we've always said to do it. Is like, you come in, you follow the laws, and you have a job, and you support yourself and everything, then
You
great.
pay
Yeah,
taxes.
you pay. Yeah, you're doing everything that we expect of a good citizen. It just so happens that you were born not here.
Well, I want you to put your JAG hat back on. So I used to be in law enforcement. My husband was a SWAT commander when he got out of
Oh,
the military, and he worked for the government. So I want to know, since when we can just pull people over without any probable cause, just based on how they look, and we don't have
yeah.
to identify ourselves. We don't have to show our badge, give a badge number, literally kidnap people off of the street. How in the hell are they getting by with what they're doing?
Yeah, because you don't have anybody to enforce the standards. So the Justice Department does not care. Should the Justice Department care? Yes. Is it unconstitutional? In a lot of ways they're doing this? Absolutely. But if there's nobody to actually make it an issue, then yeah, it's not going to be enforced.
Because they
So
might be
somebody at some point,
primaried.
somebody at some point, if the administration, and I think Steve Bannon has made this observation recently, that if the elections are lost in 26 and in 28, that a lot of people are going to go to jail. And I think he's right, for
And they should.
amongst the many reasons, the reasons you just cited.
Um, what are some, just kind of kick them around, but what are some of the quick fold ideas kind of rattle around in your head on fix? We have needed to fix our immigration for at least
Oh yeah,
30 years. And in times of drought and famine in other parts of the world, they come to the, as Reagan said, the bright shining city on the hill. Although I, so what can we do to start fixing this? Because it's ridiculous how cumbersome it is, and yet some people with a pocket full of money can get fast tracked and literally buy their citizenship.
yeah.
I'm trying to be polite here.
Well, so the last time we had comprehensive immigration reform was the same year that Maverick and Goose were in theaters. Do you remember what year that was?
No.
I was 86. So the year I got my driver's license was when comprehensive immigration reform took place. And as you know, the system's broken fundamentally. It's out of date. It's not serving us today. And it does not get fixed because it is a good campaign issue. So it's left unfixed to be a perpetual campaign issue. And that's to the detriment of us collectively and to the people who would want to come here.
Right.
So there, if you're looking to be a pragmatic reform for this system, there's two pieces, and each of the two major parties supports one of those two pieces. Neither of them supports both. So the first piece is a strong border security component, and the second piece is the comprehensive reform of the immigration system and the citizenship path to citizenship to streamline that sort of thing, and the numbers and who comes in and how that's determined. So that needs to be fixed. And fundamentally, we have the lowest birth rate since the 1930s. So we need more people coming in,
Mm-hmm.
not trying to make everybody go away as is currently happening. Now that's going to come back to bite us. So I support both the strong border security components and the let's overhaul things and increase the numbers and streamline the citizenship process, because that's fundamentally what we need to do. And I know I've lost what the question was originally, but that's where I stand on the
Oh no.
issue.
Well, my husband, who's not running for anything, I think had a kind of a brilliant idea, and I like to plan it. A lot of our immigration's coming from Central America, some from South America, not Mexico like people think. Mexico's economy is actually doing somewhat better, but they pass through Mexico. If we would take the Army Corps of Engineers and have a military installation there, we could do a couple of things. We could build desalination plants to help with their drought issue, because we actually need their agriculture in the
Mhm.
seasons where we're not growing. And in that, you're giving jobs, so you have more security down there. We have a base to where we have a better look of action instead of building bases in Timbuktu or the South Pole. And the other thing is, we can begin our immigration process there. Then we're not wasting money building a wall that they make
Yeah.
TikTok videos out of how they conquer the wall. We're starting it down there. So that's just an idea, Senator, when you get in office.
No, absolutely. I share that sentiment in the sense of the federal government could partner with multiple states
Right.
wherever like
Go
a
to where the
heavy
problem's
population comes,
starting.
and you could have if the big problem is that hey, people don't speak fluent English when they get here, well, you could have jobs down there and language training and everything like that, or when they come up here, then you send them to language training and you kind of direct them to areas where there's a shortage. Like South Dakota has a labor shortage. We've got construction uh, programs that can't find jobs. We've got healthcare, like nursing homes, that sort of thing, can't find jobs. So if you gather people and say, hey, we'll invest this into you because we expect you to be productive and
Mm-hmm.
a good citizen. You want to do this. That's why you came here, to have a job and to have a secure life and everything. So we'll invest into you on the front end. You just need to pick one of the two, three, four areas or whatever that have a shortage in that, and say that you're going to go there and spend X amount of time there for a return on our investment. So if we tailor it as opposed to people just coming and going, yeah, I'm going to Chicago, I'm going to New York. Is there something there for you? I don't know, but I've heard of those places and that's where I'm going to go.
Right.
So yeah, we could make the system better in a whole bunch of ways. Not the least of which is to start at the source and say, hey, if you're interested in coming, fill out
Yeah.
these papers here.
Let us get you let's get you on the right track.
Yeah,
And then it gets back to ice. I have a sick gut feeling that the gravy seals pretending to be some kind of law enforcement agents that cover their face and drink beer on the job and lob in grenades just for their own entertainment look awfully suspiciously like the people that hit January 6th. I'm sorry, they just do. We have no vetting. They're trying to grab up Native Americans to deport because they can't show their citizenship. They've grabbed up a slew of Puerto Ricans, not understanding that, dude, they're American citizens.
yeah,
Um, we have got to get rid of this whole ICE situation. Not that I don't think we ought to have Border Patrol, but they're nothing more to me than the brown shirts of World War II. They're just a private
yeah,
goof off police force. And they want to play gravy seals. They wouldn't serve their country when it counted, so they want to pretend they're soldiers. Just my opinion. Okay, so getting on to let's make up the rules as we go. You knew I was going to get to this one. So you want to put your JAG skills to helping out Senator Kelly. It looks like he is going to
yeah,
be drugged back into active duty.
yeah. That's I cannot believe that's happening. So I apparently should be concerned about that as well. But I would say if if they're going to go after him for basically reminding the troops of what the law is, they need to look at the coursework that is being taught to ROTC cadets or academy cadets. I used to teach a course called Law for Air Force Officers, as well as the Law of Armed Conflict courses at the Air Force Academy. We talked about what were illegal orders and that you have an obligation not to follow them. Now, there's a little bit of we talked about the risk, like how do you know it's an illegal order? Well, if you're unsure, in theory, you would go ask
You
people
ask.
like me. Yeah. So, or
Well,
you ask, somebody else.
well, like you, I started out enlisted first, and I remember almost a whole week of basic training when you're sitting in classroom was on the UCMJ. And,
Yeah.
even if you got a sunburn, you could get an Article 15. I mean,
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
and then we got to watch all the gory photos of the My Lai massacre. That just burned in my husband was there when that happened. Not at My Lai, but in Vietnam at the time. So when people say, well, okay, if you're told to murder, rape, pillage, or plunder, that's an illegal order.
Yeah.
And ask Lieutenant Calley, that was not a good defense. So and then when you get to be an officer, of course, you sit your troops down and periodically, okay, if we're going on maneuvers or we're going to do this, remember the rules of engagement. You don't attack civilians. You don't. My husband said when he was in Vietnam that a guy wanted to run over a herd of ducks. This is their livestock. That's how they hurt him. He said, no, they're not doing anything. You got to sit and wait. You can't destroy their livelihood just because you're inconvenienced.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they're going to draw people now off of retirement and bring them back to court martial them, and I remind people that means he would lose his pension, he would lose access to the VA, and how many more people like yourself would be at risk?
Yeah. So it's akin to kind of the book burning mentality of we don't want you to have, to remind people of that idea that is already out there, that is already effective for them, that we teach them at the academies and at basic training. We teach this to them. So I think it's highly unlikely that he will actually be subject to court martial. I've heard it mentioned that he may be subject to administrative demotion, which is a little bit loosey goosey, where they can knock him down from captain to commander, or basically the last rank that he held that he didn't mess up, which would just be commander. So it is a big thing, and if they in fact go through with this is going to blow up a whole bunch of folks because there's a whole bunch of retired officers that are like, you know what, that's not right because it is. I don't know
No.
if it's literally never been done before for this
Well,
reason.
it even Tammy Duckworth brought up, okay, I'm the one who named him Cadet Bone Spurs. So is calling him now names going
Yeah,
to have hurt? I mean, there it's a
I will say
snowball.
yes. Yeah. If you so Article 88, contemptuous words against the president, vice president, like Secretary of Defense, or if you're stationed in a state, the leadership of that state. So yes, on active duty, you keep your mouth shut. But essentially, they're
But you're
saying if
retired.
you if you've retired from active duty, you still have to keep your mouth shut. You're not a full citizen anymore. So that it goes into the whole free speech issue of so I've lost you do have fundamentally you've lost a lot of free speech in the military. And I get it,
Sure.
and I was fine with it. I spent my time there and I kept my mouth shut because I understood what the consequences would be and why they were that way. But at this point, I've been retired for coming up on 10 years now, and in the role that I'm doing right now, I kind of be able need to be able to say things. I can't have my mouth shut like I'm back on active duty because I'm not. I'm particularly Senator Kelly. He serves a very different purpose now than he did on active duty.
Well, and I think that's the other thing, although I know that they have the debate clause, but the Senate and the Congress, the last time in my understanding of the Constitution is that they are a co-equal branch of
Yeah.
government. And so therefore he's fully within his right to address people who would be his constituents. And like I said, anytime you're in the Senate or Congress, you affect everyone. I just think this is going to be a case for the ages.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
re-
Yeah. If they move
I
forward with this, it's one thing to threaten it, but it's quite another to actually try to do something. I cannot imagine what they would charge him with uh, if they decide to actually go to a court martial. I think it would be an easy win for a defense counsel. If not, then it would create a ton of appellate issues that the Supreme Court would ultimately resolve, presumably in his favor, although you can't really go that way
yeah,
with
not with that court.
the current Supreme Court. Yeah.
So I would hope that when you get into the Senate, you would be on the Armed Services Committee and the Judiciary Committee. And in that, let's talk about Petey Pie Hegseth, the drunk of the Pentagon, and how amazingly qualified he was for that position. That boy's a problem.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know if we can impeach cabinet members, but
Oh, yeah, you
that
can.
boy's that boy's a real problem and he needs to be addressed. He was that guy. You and I both know since we were enlisted first, it's not unusual if you're out at 20 and stuff to be at a major. So I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
He never was. So after 24 years, and he's only an '04.
It doesn't speak too highly of him, no.
Yeah, I'd like to see his evals. That's all I'm going to say about Petey Pie. Lord, I might get. Listen, if I get called back to active duty, we're really in trouble. um, so the other issue, though, that I have is the purging of our military of women and people of color. Um, his saying that they had lowered standards for women. I don't know when they did that. I was in the first group of women that were in the Army, not the Women's Army Corps. At least I knew how to do pull ups like this instead of little sissy kicky pull ups old Petey Pie was doing. Um, so, what do you think's going to happen to the military if it doesn't look like our country anymore?
Yeah, I think the Air Force, I want to say, is like 20, maybe a little over 20% female. And I worked with plenty of women in the Air Force. Some of them were not good. Many of
Nope.
them were amazing. So it's the same
It's
same
like
deal.
any
So,
population group.
yeah,
You got good, you got not so good.
yeah. And my daughter is finishing up Air Force ROTC, and she's a Russian linguist. She's going to be an Air Force intelligence officer, and she's South Dakota's 2025 Truman Scholar. So she is motivated. She was motivated to go into the military and public service, the Air Force. because of me. And she, came around with us to a lot of bases and saw what I did and everything, and thought, you know what, I want to serve too. I want to do something for the greater good, as opposed to I just want to make a buck and do everything for myself.
Right.
So she's watching what's going on, and I'm talking about it with her occasionally, like, this isn't the same Air Force that you signed up for when you decided to do ROTC. Because if you're going to be handicapped right away, of like, yeah, we'll let you in, but we don't expect much of you, and
Yeah, you don't
we're
get to
not
get
going to let you,
promoted.
yeah, we're not going to let you get too high. Then why the heck would you stick around or go in the first place if that's what you're facing? So it's going to, again, it won't necessarily be next year, but if this continues, 5, 10 years from now, you're going to have a very different military force that will just be less. It'll be less capable because you've driven away some high quality talent because they were a minority or because they're female.
Well, when I talked to Amy McGrath, as you can imagine, she was on a roll about PD Pie. But like she said, when you're flying an F-18 Hornet, you can either land it on that aircraft carrier in the middle of the ocean or you dunk it. There's no lowering of standards. You can
Yeah,
either fly that thing or you can't.
yeah.
So, okay. And then release of the Epstein files. Do you think all of this muckety muck is so we've stopped talking about the Epstein files?
I don't know. I would not discount there. A good portion of it is like, oh, look over here. Stop looking behind the curtain. Um, but fundamentally, I don't know how we have people going, you know what? We need to protect these big and powerful pedophiles from accountability.
Can you
Pedophilia,
believe
and
we
then you've
had
got
that
people coming up.
conversation?
Yeah, and then you've got people going, it's 14, 15, there is nothing wrong with that. Like, what are you talking about?
There are
I don't even understand that.
three southern states that are going, or it's going through, it's past part of the, I think their House level, to lower the age of consent.
That's
I'm like,
crazy.
it's insane. It's insane. And then, why isn't the economy working for people like me?
I think you just need to listen to the president more, and you'll realize the economy is doing great. It's never been better. So
Yeah, no, it isn't.
don't pay attention to your receipts or anything like that. Just listen to the party. Why isn't it working? There's a number of reasons, of course. We're taking away all the people that do the work, like the work, physical labor in our economy because they weren't born here or they look different. So we're kicking them out, making them scared to go to work or go to school. We are imposing tax, which the tariff power, no matter who it is defending this, the tariff power is entirely, exclusively, 100% within the purview of the legislative branch.
Bingo.
The, the president has no power to tax because it is a tax on us. So the president should not be able to do this willy nilly of like, I like you, and oh, Canada said some naughty things. I don't like you. We're going to jack your tariff. No, that is not how it's supposed to work. And so letting the legislature, letting the president just use a power that is not his in any way, shape, or form, in any way he sees fit, is destructive to the economy and just contrary to the idea that the founders came up with, that like, oh no, every branch will guard zealously its own power from being usurped by another branch.
And you can't
Partisanship
give
has
your power
undermined it.
away.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
the non-delegation doctrine. So
um my other issue is I do want you to promise that when you get into the Senate, a full accounting of just where the hell all of this money is. Like
oh god,
what Doge has done. What about, even though he claims this big ballroom he's building is donations, okay, where's the money? Where's the money being held
that's a
in
separate issue
escrow?
because the government, like, how much money's coming in and who's accounting for that? The government, you're building a government thing on government property with money that's not government money. That's its own
And
thing.
where's the plans? Because now he's saying he wants it bigger. So we tore down half of an historical building and we don't even have plans. We just have an AI drawing.
Yeah.
What the hell is going on? And everybody wants to know. And why we're not having hearings is beyond, oh well. So I thank you so much for doing this, and I want you to tell people how we can go and support you and how we can help.
Okay, well, my website is bengsforsouthdakota.com, and that is Bengs for southdakota.com. So you find some more about my background and my positions on a variety of things and my approach to thinking about life in the United States is on there. And I'm on a variety of platforms, Twitter, because that's what it was born with, and that's what I'm going to keep calling it.
There you
Uh,
go.
X is stupid. Blue Sky. I'm on TikTok even. So you look for Brian Bangs and you'll
You
find me
doing
on plenty of
Substack
places.
yet?
I do have a Substack, yeah. So we were
Good
put
deal.
out
We'll tag you
fairly
on
amount of
Substack.
regular articles there where I have a I used to be a professor, so I have a problem because and I'm an attorney. I like to go into details because that's where you make your money and that's where the questions
That's
are.
right.
But that is the biggest issue I have as a candidate is that I want to talk about the details, the nuances of like, well, that's good, but what about this? And you just can't do that. So I'm trying to not do that, but it's very grinding on me.
Yeah, I get really nerdy, and I will tell people because learning how to do this in 3 minutes or less is difficult.
Yeah.
But a lot of times I start with this is important, and so it's going to take a while when I explain the Constitution and stuff. Brian, thank you so very much. We'll get this out there. I hope that you'll come back and check in with us again in the spring. Let us know how things are going for you, and I hope your house is built by then.